Welcome to Nothing But Net. I'm Dave Rudin, and Happy New Year to everybody. We're back after a 2-week holiday break and a bunch of non-league games in the rearview mirror, and we're looking forward this week to the FCX schedule kicking off on Friday. And joining me, as always, is the coach, Mike Walsh. Mike, Happy New Year. How was your holiday season? How was Florida?
Well, Happy New Year, and I enjoyed seeing my grandchildren and my son and his wife down in Florida. Unfortunately, when you talk Florida, it's usually like good weather and 60, 70, 80 degrees. The high was about 55. So, I mean, it was nice experience to see them and enjoy their company. And I got to see a soccer practice, and I snuck into a little bit of a JV basketball practice, but we had a good time and glad to see him. But I wish the weather was a little bit warmer. But the New Year's, I didn't make it to midnight. I got to be honest with you. We came home on New Year's Eve and kind of wiped out from the trip. And I made it to about 11:15, 11:30. Then I conked out. But it's now 2024. FCX season starts Friday. I'm really looking forward to it. I did get a chance to watch a lot of basketball and a lot of the games, and I think I've seen just about everybody in the FCX. And it's going to be an exciting year. Some teams are better than I thought. Some teams are going to have to come along a little bit, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, as you know, your holiday season was a lot more fun than mine. Looking forward to 2 weeks off, and I spent the whole 2 weeks sick with probably the worst virus I can. I had pneumonia when I was in 8th grade, and I was probably sicker, but I basically the first week I had flu-like symptoms with a fever, and it just sat there for 5 days. And
Well, I'm glad you're back now and you're looking pretty good.
and last week was spent recovering, though. I was able to get out a little bit now, and I'll apologize. This was an issue for different reasons, but I still have the residual cough. But all I kept thinking was, as lousy a vacation as it was, thankful it happened when it did, and not right in the middle of the state football playoffs, or else I would have had a lot of trouble. But you watched a lot more basketball than I did. I watched a lot of college basketball. I watched a lot of football. But a lot of the coaches have been good in sending me emails and messaging in their box scores, and I've texted with a lot of coaches too. So even though I haven't seen as much as you, I kind of feel like I'm up on things, and I think we're in agreement right now as we head into the start of the league schedule. Looking at the non-league games, there's probably not much that we had in our preview that's changed right now. I don't think, I think if I wrote a preview, I don't know that I would change many teams in the top 6 or 7. I think the one team I'm intrigued to see, but they really haven't played anybody yet, is Trumbull. I'm curious about whether they may be better than I thought they were. And yeah, the league did well, though I can't say there were a whole bunch of or hardly any wow wins where any FCX teams really had a wow win. But I think we're in agreement. Basically, we're in a holding pattern where we were 2 weeks ago. And I think that's true every year. It's going to take us 2 weeks now, league games, to really, if the needles are going to start moving, it'll be 2 weeks from now.
Well, I do think that there were several games that kind of gave me an indication. I thought that I saw the Notre Dame Fairfield versus Richfield game on Saturday night up in Richfield. The place was packed. It was a great crowd. It was like a playoff atmosphere, and an exciting game and low scoring game. 45-43 was the final score, but both teams played hard, and Richfield is Richfield. Andrew played a lot of kids, and they got minutes. in front of the big crowd, and I think that'll help them as they go forward. He also went up and played St. Bernard's of Uncasville, who was another top 10 team, and he was up there. They were right with him. I don't ever like to criticize officials, but I always try to get along with officials most of the time. But I thought, to be honest with you, that Richfield got a raw deal on several calls up there. It could have been a closer game. So, I mean, Andrew does it the right way. He goes out and he's got a good team, and he challenges them early with playing some games against tough opponents. And they're 4-1 headed into the FCIAC, and I believe they open up on Friday with Staples.
Yeah, that's where I start my year. The one thing I wonder is there a little bit more of a gap between Ridgefield and everybody else than we think?
And watching Ridgefield, they didn't have a good shooting night, and that I think that they're going to come along, and they're going to be tough to beat. But I don't think that they're like the invincible Ridgefield team that they have been in. Not last year, but the year before. But they're going to be right there. There's no question about it. Staples is the one that surprised me a little bit. They played a pretty good West Haven team in a tournament up in Danbury, and they hung tough and they beat them. Obviously, Sam Clatchell, he's probably one of the better. He's one of the best players in the league, and he's kind of their leader. But they do have some other people around him. I think they haven't played anybody except West Haven. But they're going to be tough, and it should be an interesting game. I don't. Is the game in Richfield or at Westport?
Game's in Westport. As a matter of fact, I'm headed there after we finish recording this to go do a story on Sam. Who went from as a freshman. I'd say maybe a little bit more than a role player, and certainly more so as the season went on. And now as a sophomore, has got to be the man. And I'm kind of curious, just to see how he's handling that role.
Yeah, he's got some people around him. Tobias is a pretty good player, and a couple of the other kids, they can play the guards. They're young and they don't have a lot of size, but they could be tough. Another team that I saw, that will give Richfield trouble is Wilton. They have pretty good size. And they have Joel. I think Joel is an excellent coach. He beat a pretty good Fitch team at Wilton, and then he went up and played a really tough Hand team on their court and ended up coming up short. But he's got some talent. He's got 3 or 4 kids that can play. And he's got
Luciano Roy is a good one too, with Jarvie in the middle.
Yeah, Roy and Lucetta and Jarvie brings the toughness, and they're all like 6'2", 6'4". McKiernan can shoot it a little bit. I think Wilton is right there from what I see. Trumbull, I looked at who they played in their schedule. They really haven't played a good team yet, but they have the talent to come along, and I'm sure they're gaining confidence. They're 4-0 now. And
they might be the most athletic team in the league, just in terms of having the number of athletes that they have. You look at the players on the roster, and they play Danbury next Tuesday, which is an interesting game.
Well, that should be a good game. But the kid that surprised me when I watched Trumbull was Bull. He's a very good athlete, as you told me. He's a soccer standout.
He's going to Yale, right? State soccer player of the year. Great kid, great athlete. Was a big goal scorer with everybody. In soccer, in basketball parlance, teams like to play box and one on him in soccer.
He actually shot the ball well. They have Fowler and Johnson. And they have a nice mixture. They have 3 seniors that play a lot, and then they have a sophomore, Sean Wilson, who I think will be a good player, and Johnson's only a junior, I think. But they're one team to reckon.
They're one of the teams I would put on my list. I'm not making any statements until we have a couple of week of league games, but they're a team that a candidate for team underestimated in the preseason. Candidate, not an entry yet.
No question. And it's interesting. You said they're playing Danbury next Tuesday. That'll be a good test. Danbury, they're 2-2, but they played a pretty good schedule also. They lost to Richfield the first game. But then they came back and they beat a very good Waterbury Career Academy team.
Yeah.
And that was a good win for them. And of course, my man Perkins, he had 30. And I'm going to tell you, any team that has a scorer like Perkins is going to be tough for anybody to beat. So Danbury may not have the depth; they may not be as talented as they were last year, but I think that they could beat anybody on a given night. You talk about athleticism; the two Perkins and a couple of the other kids they're pretty athletic. And then the team that we really haven't talked about, and they have one loss. They lost to Colby Cathedral, who's another top 10 team, and they played them at their place. And they were pretty much, with them, but they came up short. But again, one thing you got to realize about Stanford, their best player is the kid EJ Presley. And AJ, he's a football star, quarterback, an excellent quarterback. And JJ Salvatore, I don't know how much he's played already this year. Along with Winchester, that's a pretty good threesome right there. And they'll get better as the season goes on, especially once Coach Dan, puts his magic together and gets that team going. But they won the Brookfield tournament. I don't know how exciting that is, but that was a good win for them. They have some confidence. They're starting to get their players in a basketball mode. And they'll be, we just mentioned 6 teams that have a good chance of being successful during the season. But I still think
the other team that I don't know a lot about them yet, but I know coaches that have scouted them. There's a little award buzz going on right now. A lot of new faces, a new coach, but the coaches that I've been in touch with who've scouted them have been impressed.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I did see Ward play against Notre Dame and Fairfield, and they gave Notre Dame and Fairfield in that Christmas tournament at Fairfield U all they could handle. I was very impressed with Ward. I forgot to mention them. They that night I thought they played really well. They shot it pretty well. And they're very young. I think they only have one senior, and he didn't even start. So, I mean, the coaches did a nice job with him taking over from Ryan Squaller. And I think that, Ward, I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to mention them. They're certainly one of the top 6, I think, in the league. And on a given night, who knows? And don't forget that with quarterfinals, I think are still at Ward if they make it in, so they may have a home court advantage there. But I think our friend Joe,
we have a nice Friday night home game. That's the other big game. Ward hosts Wilton, so we'll learn a little bit more about them on Friday night.
Yeah, I to be honest, I really think those 6 teams that we just mentioned are going to be in the playoffs. I think where it gets interesting is maybe 7 and 8. And 9 and 10, having seen like Ludlow, I think Ludlow has the Howdy brothers, and they played. They're 4-1, but again, their big game was against Notre Dame and Fairfield. They played with them for a half, and then they kind of got worn down. But they're with John Daly, they're going to give people a lot of trouble. And Danny Melzer was unfortunate in his first game. He lost up in Brookfield, who I guess is not too bad a team. But again, he's got all these football players, and now they're starting to put it together. And by the end of the season, I think New Canaan will be a team that could be challenging for that 6, 7, 8 seed. Greenwich, I've seen only.
I was just going to say if I have a possible sleeper to watch, Greenwich, based on what I've been seeing, would be a leading candidate.
I think so. The only thing with Greenwich is they really haven't played anybody. Fairfield Prep is not what Fairfield Prep used to be, and I think their other win came against Bassett. But again, they have a couple of players that can put the ball in the basket. I think they're definitely a challenge for that 7th, 8th spot. The team that I thought was very athletic, and they have one of the best. Talk about Sam Kletcher. He's very good, obviously. But the other kid, T.J. Wright on St. Joe's.
You're on the TJ Wright bandwagon right now.
I'm going to tell you, that kid could play. He got a pull-up jump shot. He'll hit the three. He's quick to the basket. But they're not big, and that's going to really hurt them, I think. But when you have a kid like that and you need a basket, he can get that basket. So, I mean, if they can
really good defensive back in football too. Really athletic. One of the best defensive players in the league.
Well, I haven't seen him play football, but I can imagine with his athleticism how good he could be in football. But he's a terrific basketball player, and he reminds me a lot of the kid from Norwalk, Jaden, who we haven't even talked about, who was all FCIAC player. Brown, I think he had 38 the other night against Hamden, which was not a bad team. Norwalk may be a little bit underrated for that 7th, 8th spot. We've mentioned just about everybody, I think, on the podcast.
I think it's going to be parity filled, and because we're not a star-filled league, the ceilings for a lot of teams are at a certain level, and it makes for a lot more competitive games and more teams being involved. Right now, I only see a possible handful of teams that will be heavy underdogs in most games, and I only see a handful of teams that are going to be heavy favorites in most games. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of teams beating up on everybody. And like I said, we went through the league, and right now a lot of these non-league wins don't look overly impressive, but they may end up looking better as the season goes on. I think everybody's just kind of gotten their feet wet a little bit, and again, to me, it takes 2 weeks of league games to start getting a good feel of things.
Well, I agree with that, and I do want to mention West Hill because last year they went through a tough season, and they were 0-20 and had to go play East Catholic because they were in Division I for some reason. I don't know why they were in Division I, but anyway, and they got their first 2 wins. They won their first game against Barlow, and then came back against Wright Tech and got 2 wins. And unfortunately for them, they played Richfield the next game. But I was glad to see the coaches there. Long-time assistant coach get his first win. I'm trying to blank on the name. I'm sorry.
Roberto,
yeah. Roberto is a good guy and a great kid.
He's paid his dues at that school for so long as a veteran assistant coach.
Right. He got his first 2 wins, and I was happy to see that. McMahon has got a long road ahead of them, I think, having watched them. But, who knows? Maybe the coach can turn that one around. Central, I can't figure out. I saw them in the fall league. They looked okay, but, then they have not played too well to start the season. But, again, it's a long season, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens, because I think that Richfield is back to what they were doing before. Their key player is Alistair Walsh, by the way. No relation to me, which is fortunate for him. But he everything goes through him. I mean, their offenses, and he's on the floor. He subs a lot, Andrew, but Alistair, for the most part, is always on the floor.
How's my boy Swadowitz looking?
Swadowitz, when I saw, had a tough night. I think he missed. He was about 0 for 5 from 3, but he plays hard. And the big number 35, Nick, you can pronounce his last name, but I always have trouble with that.
You cannot pronounce Skenga.
I don't know why.
We're gonna have to get this worked out where you go Nick, and I'll bring in Skenga because you can't pronounce that.
We'll work it out. but you know, they're not. He's not the only big guy. They have a couple other good sized kids
They have high,
on that team.
they have a little bit of everything. They're kind of like a Noah's Ark of like two of everything.
And the kid that shot the ball well against Notre Dame Fairfield, he had three pointers. Was Andrew Hickey, number 23,
Toxic,
4
yeah.
rather. So you know, he's somebody's going to have to knock off Richfield, but it's not going to be easy because Andrew will have developing his bench, and you know, it's. I really think that they have to be the favorites. But like you say, anybody can beat anybody. I'm really interested to see how Staples does with their young crew up in when they play
Well,
Richfield.
they
That'll
had,
be
they had
exciting.
Ridgefield's number last year. They beat them up there regular season, and then they knocked them off in the semifinals of the
And
FCS
you don't think
tournament.
that that's on the Richfield bulletin board right now?
Drew's ever since the Notre Dame of Fairfield game, Drew's probably had something up on the blackboard or something every day.
Yeah, no question. But I know that they've circled that game against Staples, and you know, for good reason. Staples, yeah, they're tough because I think the size may really hurt them against Richfield, though.
I think that's where it's a bad matchup for Staples is the size differential.
Yeah, it's not a great match, but you know, hey, listen,
If
I
Staples
don't
hits
think I
their
didn't think
shot, if
anybody.
Staples hits their shots, then it won't be that big a
I didn't
difference.
think anybody think it was a great matchup last year, and they beat them twice. But
Yeah,
again, that's you know, that's a game to watch. And the Ward Wilton game, they always play tough. I didn't they had a couple overtime games.
yeah.
It's going to be exciting, and I can't wait for Friday to see the start of the FCX season. I'll be watching Ward Wilton for you. By the way, Local Live seems to have lost a lot of their schools.
Really?
A lot of them have gone to Huddle, and fortunately, I'm on Huddle, so I can see every one of those games.
Yeah,
And,
I haven't. I'm hoping this off season you know, during off days to watch a little bit more than I have in the past. But I only have a short ride home on Friday, so I'm not going to get the in-depth analysis I would normally get from you.
You'll get it on Saturday morning,
I'm
probably.
gonna have to have my Saturday morning coffee catching up for you now. But is there anything else that like I said, I don't think there's anything right now that has really moved the needle one way or another since I wrote my previous.
Well, the only thing that we can talk a little bit about has been the shot clock. And every game I watched, the shot clock has not been really any kind of factor, to be honest with you. There have been one or two shot clock violations, but it really hasn't been an issue. And the foul situation it really hasn't been too much of an issue too, where they've changed it's 5 fouls in a quarter and you're shooting 2. At the end of the game, a couple of games that I saw, it mattered because you know nobody's shooting. You're fouling a guy and he's not shooting 1-on-1. Less pressure, and you know it makes it tougher to come back if you're down in that situation. But you know, other than that, I don't think there's really been too many issues.
I never expected the shot clock to be. You complained about the shot clock on games where teams really held the ball, but there weren't a lot of games where teams held the ball. So I didn't expect a shot clock, and I thought we should have a shot clock. I just didn't think it was going to be as big a factor as others seem to think it would be.
No, 35 seconds is a long time. I'd rather see him go to a 30-second clock, to be honest with you. And my other rule change, if you want to say that, I'd like to see him go to 2 halves, where they play a 16-minute first half, a 16-minute second half, with extra timeout, obviously. But again, they've made the decision to go to the 35-second shot clock. I think that's a great thing, although it really has not affected the games that I saw anyway. So, I mean, and then, of course, there's a whole issue of the state tournament. We have several teams in Division I with Staples and Richfield and Danbury. I believe those are the only teams in the FCIAC are in Division I.
I think between now and the next podcast, I may publish a column. The one thing I thought about a little bit over break, I want to go back. I don't want to go back. We have to go back to double L, M, and S. I've decided every time the state tries to do something to make it special, they screw it up. They've done it in football. They've done it in basketball. You know, to me, the basketball state tournament is couldn't be a bigger embarrassment. I know there's issues that have to be resolved with the private schools, but you know what? Let's have a tournament then where everybody's on equal footing.
Yeah, no, it's I don't disagree with that at all. But so you were laying in bed sick with the virus, thinking about the state
Yeah,
tournament.
I
What
was that's the delirium I was going through. You know,
I was going to say you had to be delirious or something, but no, I'm glad you're getting better. And
I was having a vision. I was watching, you know, the Giants lose, and I don't think I've taken more naps than I had the last 2 weeks either. I'd be watching a TV show and I thought I fell asleep for 5 minutes and it was 45 minutes and I had to go rewatch everything. But somewhere in that state of delirium, I decided and until we come up with a system that works, and I'm skeptical that in Connecticut we can do that. Let's go back to 4 classes based on school size.
well, listen, you or I are not going to change that. And I don't know, football seems to be able to change it on a whim, but
We just
basketball.
had 6 state champions and teams under 500 qualifying, and we can't. Yeah, we can't. Every time we try to do something special in this state, we're incapable of doing it. So let's just do what everybody else does. It works in all the other sports. There's nothing wrong with having a tournament based on size, and we'll figure out how to handle. Maybe you put based on performance. Maybe that's how you handle the schools of choice. But I'm just kind of tired of you know, this state tournament the way it is now.
Well, listen,
Make it fair.
no, you know, look, that'll be a whole different discussion, but I really
We
think
had a little bit of time here beforehand, and I'm still a little cranky from being sick, so I wanted to grouse about that. But that was my one big thought on you know, I didn't solve world peace, but I did decide that I might make a move with the state basketball tournament since I hate this so much.
well, maybe the basketball committee will give you a call, and you can you know, let them know what you think, and maybe they'll go along with what you think.
I did.
But,
I did tell you the person who's responsible, the former coach who threw a game that screwed up when we had the best tournament. I was covering the New Canaan State semifinal football game, and I sat in the press box because my back was bothering me, and he was doing the clock in front. And
who hired him? The CIAC?
Our former FCI coach who threw the game that screwed up the state tournament. He was I don't know what his role is, but he was working for the CIAC running the clock. And I was literally right behind him, and I judiciously didn't say a word.
Well, he's lucky you didn't say anything.
I wasn't going to cause a scene in the. I mean, you know, what he did is so long ago, and water under the bridge. But I just thought it was kind of funny. I didn't recognize him until somebody called him by name.
Well, listen, he's basically a good guy. I've known him for a lot of years, but he made one bad decision, which cost the state tournament to
be screwed up the state tournament for 2 decades.
But anyway, getting back to the FCIAC quickly, I think that there's some really good players in the league this year. I think obviously you have Perkins and you have people like that, but the sophomores impressed me. Not only Sam Clacko, who's obviously very good and had a good year last year, but the kid TJ Wright, he's a nice player. The kid over at Trumbull, Sean Wilson, is a good player, and I'm probably forgetting some of the other ones that can be. So I mean, you have a nice mixture. Some of the juniors like Johnson and Trumbull, and I think Richfield has a couple of juniors that are pretty good. Nick is 35,
Kanga.
is a junior, right? I think, and so I'm looking forward to seeing some of these kids play and develop, and it's something to look forward to.
Well, we got the first bunch of games Friday night, which will be the impetus for the next podcast. So I'm looking forward to getting out there and seeing everybody, and starting in Westport with Ridgefield, and I'll talk to you for the update on Wilton Ward, and we'll do this again next week back on schedule.
No question. Looking forward to it. I'll give you the rundown on Wilton Ward and anyone else I can get on the live stream. And one of these days I'll get out to a couple games. I won't be able to take notes like you.
You do it. I'll get the limo.
Well, again,
come.
We should have fun.
You come to a game with me this year. I'll get the limo to pick you up.
No, listen. I just, as I say, I'm looking forward to seeing all the action and the kids and the coaches. One thing we didn't mention, and it's, I think, really important, is that we have tremendous coaches in this league. When you look at who we have, and I'm not going to mention all the names, but we've had coaches. I will mention them.
Well, let's we're running out of time here, so let's.
Oh, you're running out of time. Well,
we're running out of time. Let's save the coaches.
Did I mention any coaches? No,
I agree with you wholeheartedly. But let's that's the end of this episode of Nothing But Net. Thanks again to the coach Mike Walsh, and thanks again to Cooper Boardman for the sound editing. We'll be back to see you next week.
Looking forward to it.